morning. Welcome to a tertiary world. Today I begin reading you the first 7 memories that arose as I walked down Lygon Street, the second east-west street, and one of 14 streets that made up a grid in inner suburban Melbourne. I walked down each of those 14 streets in order to retrieve or to verify, to remember perhaps, the substance of a memory body that I had constructed through living my life inside that grid. Lygon Street is the second east-west street, the second of 7, and this is the second memory. Its colour is orange, and the colour of this memory is also orange. The corner of Elgin and Lygon. We left the Café Universitaire that first night in Melbourne, and we walked down Lygon Street to the corner of Elgin. It was a very windy and cold August evening, and there was something unusual about the air around us. I can't tell you what it was, a kind of absence of our presence, as though no matter how many of us there might have been around that night, we were simply not enough to fill the void, to affect the rawness of the elements swirling around us. Though Melbourne was far bigger than Trieste, it did not yet feel like a city. Though its buildings were taller, its roads wider, and its traffic thicker, the substance of a city, its flesh, its ancient memory, its contradictions, even its unpleasantness, seemed to be missing. It was as though someone had picked up all the superficial components of a city, or perhaps simply the bare idea of a city, and had put them together randomly, perhaps in a rarely used room of a large house located in an abandoned suburb of a city belonging to another time. That's the feeling I had, although I couldn't articulate it then, and it's taken me 50 years to even begin to approach the subject. The air tasted sharp and wild, untainted, at odds with the buildings around me that all seemed to be constructed with care. That's why when we stepped out of the cafe, as I was saying before, what immediately caught my eye was a bright red street sign swinging above the road in the distance. As we got closer, I saw that it was suspended right above the intersection of Elgin and Lygon Street. There were no traffic lights operating on that corner then, and the swinging street sign seemed strangely irrelevant, glowing red in the solitude of the dark emptiness of a winter's night. I suddenly asked my father what the sign meant, and he told me he didn't know. Holding hands, we walked to the centre of the intersection until we were right under it, close enough to hear the wires and metal groan and rattle as it swung randomly in the wind gusts. As we were looking up at it in a begrudging admiration, as though somehow this sign represented all that was alien yet able in our new world, as though its inarticulateness was simply a language destined to always lay beyond our reach. He began to spell it out, trying to decipher its meaning. D-A-N-G-E-R, he said slowly, pronouncing vowels and consonants in Italian. D-A-N-G-E-R. He kept repeating it, trying to find a way into the centre of the word, into its significance. Though it was only early evening, the streets were totally deserted. Not even a car had passed by us. It was like we were standing in the centre of a big stage, surrounded by an empty theatre whose remote darkness rattled in the wind. Remember that word, my father said, looking gravely down at me, because tomorrow we will try and find out what it means. Don't forget, he exhorted, repeating it 3 times. I looked away. I won't, I replied. I won't. The third memory, yellow, the corner of Elgin and Rathdowne. It must have been sometime in 1959. My mother was for some reason leaving her job with John Napoli. She took my sister and I along to meet her future employer in Carlton. All I remember is this: getting off the bus at the corner of Elgin and Rathdowne streets and looking west, directly up Elgin. There, jutting out from the background of confused midwinter clouds, was the Redmond Barry building, an ungainly cream brick tower with black anodized aluminium windows regularly dotting its height. I have to say this again, because somehow this is an unforgettable moment. The bus is roaring away from us, belching clouds of exhaust as my mother gathers us together. I look up and there's the Redmond Barry, shrouded in grey and purple clouds. Why did its sight strike me so? I have come to believe that perhaps at that moment I instantly recognised the awesome coming together of all the irresistible forces of our destiny and the stage they would be played out in. A little like your kitchen window being finally cleaned by an invisible hand, revealing the world outside that had always been waiting for this moment. The view that came into focus that morning towards the western sky appeared because the hand of destiny had cleaned in that moment the window pane of appearances. Suddenly all was unmasked and I had no language to speak it. I found out many years later that Sir Edmund Barry, the Victorian Supreme Court judge, had passed the final sentence on Ned Kelly, ordering him to be hanged by the neck until dead. Somehow, the building utterly symbolised Barry as he actually is, or at least as I have imagined him, dry and elongated, predictably observing the letter of the law while simultaneously outlining the mystery of an individual's collision with his fate. Mostly like the building itself, unseen and forgotten, though deeply etched in our collective subconscious. I don't know exactly why we didn't attend school that day, why my mother needed to have us with her, why I remember that particular light in the sky surrounding the distant building, blurred by the movement of everything around us, yet so clear in my memory that I could count the windows lining the east-facing elevation, even now. Such is life. Until tomorrow, when I continue with more Lygon Street memories. Thank you for your attention. Until tomorrow.